Okay. I know Erlinda's gone to get a couple more copies, but if everybody's at least got the front sheet, we're going to start off there. What I want to say is that last year was a very good year for the church. We brought in more than expected, which is always a wonderful thing. But if you look at the first sheet you have there titled Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, and it's got December 2024, you can see our complete offering was a little over $361,000. So that was wonderful. And compared to our budget, it was over by 114%. So 14% over what we thought we were going to get. You look at the expenses, a little over $323,000, 91% of the budget. So we underspent on the expense. That's nothing new for Holy Trinity. We usually do that every year. I did break it down by the groups, come together, grow in faith, serve the Lord. So you can see that serve the Lord, we spent all the money, so that's a good news. That's money going out to other agencies in our area and around the world that we donate money to. Administration came in at 92%, and total personnel was 90%. Reason on the personnel side is we had budgeted to have a music director through the year, which we didn't end up getting an additional music person, Jonathan, until the very end of the year. So that's why we were running under for that. So with that being said, we'll close out 2024 as a very good year and roll into 2025. What I want to start with is the next page is titled Major Changes for 2025 before we actually get into the budget, because most of it stays roughly the same. You know, we carry on the same budget line items that we do from year to year. But one of the first ones that's on there is a bookkeeping contract. I went out and talked to different bookkeeping groups to see what their services were. I went online, called people up just to see where it should be from a cost perspective, but also what they do and who they do it for. I also reached out to people in the congregation that deal with accountants, bookkeeping, that kind of thing. So it's Danielle is who we're going to use with D Consulting, and she actually does bookkeeping in the area, but also does church bookkeeping. So that's really, and you've got a copy of the contract in your packet, and so it's $9,200 because it's $725 a month plus a $500 startup charge for that. We as a church are getting to the point where we need to look at outsourcing some of the things that we do that we don't have as many people volunteering to do certain things. And my main man, Barry, has been doing this for a long time. And so it's time to outsource it. I think not only is it time, but I think it's going to be a good opportunity for myself and Holy Trinity to lean on Dee and her staff to teach me some things about what they do for other churches. And so hopefully we'll be able to have some changes over the next couple of years to come more in line with what other churches do. But more on that. The next one is yard care. So using the same group that we use for our snow plowing, we are going to now have the property mowed every other week by the same group. So that's in there for $5,000. There's also an option if we want to use them also for just yard cleanup, in the spring and in the fall. But for right now, we're just planning on the mowing. There's a line in here for pastor's discretionary.
So this increase in pastor's discretionary, it came about in a circular fashion. In the pages to come, you'll find that our pastor is not getting a raise. That wasn't the intention of the council. We wanted to give a pastor a raise, 5% increase, and he will explain why. Well, he'll explain why he politely declined, and then I'll explain our Plan B that the council proposed.
You all have been very generous to me. I feel more than fairly compensated. And one of the realities that we know that we addressed this last year is to make some adjustments in the amount of time I spend here so that I can balance the two churches that I serve. And people have been incredibly flexible and understanding about that. And so when the council came to me and said, well, we want to give you an increase in your salary, I said, no, thank you. I feel like I'm compensated just fine, but if you insist, which they did, then I said what I'm going to insist is that we take that amount of money and we direct it to a charity. And I have yet to figure out which charity. They were kind enough to say I can make that decision. And I have yet to sort of figure that out. But that's what I sincerely want to do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last one that went up, pulpit supply, and based on what we just heard with pastor taking a little bit more time away, we will need to increase for the number of people we have coming in to fill in for that time. So those are the four major ones, and then I'll get into the budget. Not going to go through each line, but I will cover the highlights, which is that, as we saw, a little over $361,000 was what we had. We finished with 2024. I'm forecasting a little over $371,000 for our budget for 2025. And added a little bit more in for Sunday fellowship. That line covers funerals like we just had yesterday, and we know we've got a couple more coming up, and there probably will be some more throughout the year. So that one went up, just covering those expenses. As you go down through, left the synod the same as what we did last year. Most everything else follows along pretty well, and you will see the items I talked about added in there for the budget. And what I'm happy to say for this budget is when you look at the bottom number, it balances. We're at the same number. So if all goes according to plan, we won't have an overage, we won't have an underage. So I'm happy that it works out that way for 2025. So I'll give you a moment to take a look at that. The other thing, like I said in your packet, is you have a copy of the bookkeeper's contract, which once it's approved, then we'll go ahead and get that signed. They'll actually start doing that in February if it's approved. The last thing you have is called a profit and loss statement. I'm not going to go through it, but you can take a look at it. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the annual meeting. What it is it's an attempt to show where all the money went in a certain period for income and expenses. So it will have the lines that you're used to seeing in a balance sheet or some of our other financials, but towards the end of it, what you'll see is it will show the income that we got from our investments. This church has done a very good job of keeping their financial house in order, and you'll see that we have interest from our CDs that are out there. You'll see that we have interest or growth from some of the other investment vehicles we have. That helps to keep the congregation going. You can also see what we paid for the basement, which I believe was around $6,000. You can also see what we paid for the steeple, which I think was around $18,000. So it can be difficult or not that much fun to follow for a profit and loss statement, but it does show where all the money comes and goes. So I just leave it there if you're interested to peruse through it. If you've got any questions, I would be happy to talk about that one after the meeting. But back to what we're here for, is there any questions or thoughts on the budget itself? Like I said, for the most part, it's laid out like all the others you've seen, except for those other items that I mentioned that add to our budget for 2025.
At the very beginning, there was a lot of commotion. I didn't hear what you said about the surplus for the past year. And my assumption is that part of that surplus is going to the new additions that you are specified in there.
That is not the case.
Okay.
What we're going to hear later is what we're doing with the surplus. What I wanted to do, because the opportunity was there, is I want a balanced budget to show that whatever we have coming in, that's what we're going to spend in 2025. No other questions?
While you all are thinking of another question, I'll let you in on a secret that I learned from being on council. Dan, in his wisdom, always makes sure that the line items in the budget are divisible by 12, so that for each month, it's an even number, and that's why lawn care is $5,004.
Yes, I have to flow it out over the 12 months, and I'm always sitting there on the calculator trying to figure out, okay, how many cents is that, or which month should have more. So this way, if I make them divisible by 12, it's so much easier.
I was kind of looking at it again, and I just thought I'd speak to when I see the, 400% increase. I'm like, oh. And Jonathan is doing a great job with music. He'd like to explore more musical options, and hence that budget line was increased, just to let you know, too. That was on, I think on page 1, about a quarter or a third of the way down. More FYI. Yeah, any other questions? What you see? Yep.
In the major changes for 2025, the item that's labeled pastor's discretionary for $3,500. And thank you for the explanation by Pastor Luther and his generosity and kindness to, kind of pay that forward to a charity to be named. But in the budget, I haven't looked, Dan, do we also have something called pastor's discretionary fund that we annually put money in so that during the course of the year, the pastor is able to help people in need that may come to him, or for other kind of discretionary, typically social service type uses?
Yes, you actually have 2 in this budget. One is for the specific $3,500 that is going to a charity. We have another one that we have $1,500 for pastor for when people do come, because that does come up, and it is nice to be able to help people out when they first just walk in the door.
Okay, thank you.
On that point, the other thing I would say is that every now and again, I get honoraria from people for performing various ministerial acts. I don't ask for one for members, but sometimes I get them anyway, and that is another source of funding for the pastor's discretionary account. I'll always sign those over to the account. I'll
All right, well, I appreciate it. You're a very good group.
Thank you, Dan, for your hours and hours of work and preparation. You're going to be handed out a motion now and Glenn, this talks to our surplus of what the council is proposing to do. And I'm going to give you a minute for it to be handed out, and then I will review what the council is proposing. Actually, I could help. So we have wonderful news in that the balance sheet, which is the non-operating budget for us, it's another ledger, has $64,106 in our surplus, and it's confusing, but it's titled current budget, even though it's on the balance sheet and not part of our operating expenses. And this past year, we had a surplus of $37,929. There's a number of reasons for that. I would say primarily, Dan, is that we didn't hire a music director, straight out of this past year, 2024, that it materialized for us later in November. So that's a large part of where that surplus came from. And our motion is to spend all our surplus so that there is a zero balance starting out with the year 2025. And this is the way we're proposing spending that money. The first is we would like to donate $25,000 to a cause that supports low-income housing in this area. We've just started minimally exploring Christ Episcopal Church property. There is the Episcopal Diocese that is working on trying to make that space low-income housing. They're still in the beginning stages of doing so. Pastor has met with the bishop and talked to him a little bit about that, but it's very much in the beginning stages. Of course, we have had a relationship with Habitat for Humanity in the past, and that could be a viable option. What we're planning on as a council is, or what we're proposing, is that we establish a task force to look into how we as a church can support low-income housing best in this area. And not only financially, but also as an opportunity for us to help in some way, shape, or fashion in this dire need. The other expenditures are for the church. The first one is our music program. Last August, our very capable piano technician, tuned the piano, but said you really need some major repairing done. We asked if it could wait until this meeting because the cost was higher for, the members had to vote on us spending that amount of money. Our plan is to use, we have an organ fund on this balance sheet too, that is $1,410. And we would use that fund as well as contribute from the $64,106, the remainder $5,340 to be able to rehab our piano. The other great cost is the reseal coating of our parking lot. An estimate was given for us for $20,000. It was last done in 2018. And in addition, we're looking for labeling the handicap spots, within stenciling, within that cost, coming to $22,000. The last recommendation is to install 2 heat pumps in both Mark's office and Pastor's office that will provide heat in the winter, air conditioning in the summer. And that is a result that it's very difficult to move our present air conditioners. The windows are damaged, and the council believe it's time to move on to having a way to heat and control our air temperature that's easier for those using it, and I guess taking care of that whole system as well. And that cost, the council has decided on the company Revision Energy. Christina can talk a little bit more, but she had gotten cost estimates from a couple different companies, and the council is recommending Revision Energy. That's at a cost of $11,766. And that it does include a $2,000 tax credit. So when I added up the mission work, piano repair, parking lot driveway seal coating, and stenciled handicap signage, and the heat pumps, it miraculously came to like within $6 of our surplus. And I felt like I was in Kairos time instead of Chronos time. It was like, okay, this is a sign of affirmation. So I'm just letting you know that. I'm not a numbers person, but it almost balanced within $6. So that's what we are proposing. Do you want to say a few more things about the heat pump? I know we passed out more information about the heat pumps.
Does anyone have questions about them? In a nutshell, they basically take, in the wintertime, the heat that's outdoors and brings it inside, and in the summer, it takes the cool air in the outdoor air and brings it inside the house. That's the gist of how it works. It's not as efficient when it gets below 10 degrees, but we have one in our house, and it supplements our our propane gas heat. So when it's pretty cold outside, it's on, supplementing what our propane does. So we find it helpful. You can see the measurements of the units. You often see them in restaurants. They're up high. They're usually white, but you can put a special kind of like wallpaper sticky stuff on to make it look like your wall. We've been very happy with them. Low maintenance, and Revision is the company we've used, and they're very good with service, even though we haven't had any issues with our heat pump. The other company I asked to come was 603 Solar, who is local in Exeter, but it's under a bigger umbrella company called Live Free Cooling and Electric. And they were proposing to put one condenser outside and splitting it to each of the offices. And when I was looking at the BTUs needed for each of the rooms, it seemed to be more power than was needed. And Revision's was more equal to the size of the room. There's a formula you can see on the back. You take the square foot of the room and multiply it times 20, which is 20 BTUs per square foot. And then you get the amount of BTUs you need. And Revision seemed to match our size better. So, and they also were less money. Anyone out there have heat pumps? Okay, so you can speak if you want about them.
What I like about them, what I like about them is that they are so quiet. And I had a regular air conditioner before, but this is very quiet
Yeah.
and works very well.
And Lois.
I have one in a large room that's only used when my daughter comes in the summertime. And I'll tell you, you put that on, I use it when it's too hot. And it goes on so easily, so
Yep.
quickly, it's just so efficient. And we also had it at our house, at our beach house in New Jersey, for the hot and cold, and it was great.
Great.
In the heat pumps, it says we get a $2,000 tax credit. As a 501c3 organization, do we file an income tax return?
Revision know that we're a church, so I'm figuring, they did all of our paperwork, so I'm putting it on them to understand that.
I think- I think-
I don't know. They
I-
were the ones that did the quote, so,
I had the same question, but I think the answer is we qualify for the credit based on, you get it back from the government.
I didn't hear.
How do you get the money back?
Oh, they send you a check.
Recently, I mean, because in my understanding, the tax credit is from government, so how we get it when we don't file the tax.
I'll ask.
Or in my thinking, we might get charged, the $11,000, but we might not see that money because, we won't necessarily get it back, but we will not have paid for it either. I don't know. I kind of thought of it as that because we do not do taxes, so we're not going to see, we don't give anything and we will not receive anything. Yeah, good question.
I don't have a question on the heat pump, but I have a question on the seal coating. Does the quote include relining?
The relining, they give as a donation to the church,
Okay.
but the handicap stenciling was new from the quote, which was given in the fall.
Okay, thank you.
And they may also add that to the donation. They haven't gotten back to me yet about it.
As far as the actual heat pump unit is concerned, is it being projected that it'll go through the current windows or that it'll be through the wall?
It will be, I don't think it's going to be on the wall on the outside because there's no wall for it because they're all the windows. So they're going to have to put it on the interior walls.
Okay, and then you said it was written that there was some damage to the windows? So is that a repair in
Well, the
another
window
line?
can survive if we don't keep on using it for air conditioning, in my estimation.
Okay.
Because the sill with all the weight over the years. So it's closed and Mark doesn't ever really open it, so we'll just let it be.
Okay.
It's also the moving of the air conditioners and the storing in the shed. It's a lot as we all get older.
I just didn't know if there was damage to the windows that need to be repaired.
No, it was just the sill.
Is this projected to take place relatively quickly?
Yeah, they said that if there's no issues, that it could be in by April, but if there's issues, it would be June with their scheduling,
The reason
meaning the permitting with the town.
the reason I stated it that way, Google says that yes, 501c3s can participate, but it's through the Inflation Reduction Act, which
Oh.
potentially could go away really
Right.
quickly.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, Unfortunately, the vote's not till next Sunday, but I'll give Amy the heads up, the person from revision.
Okay, so this is a question from someone who hasn't dealt with finances of church very long, but, so the idea here is that we're spending down a surplus and the budget will balance, but that means we have no cushion. Is that considered good policy or normal? I don't know. Thank you.
Very good question. And one of the things I was alluding to was we keep our financial house in order is we finished 2024 with 400,000 in the bank. So we are not in danger of running out of money on hand. The thought process at the council is that we actually have probably too much on hand. So the discussion was to use the surplus line, which is the surplus is over many years. As obviously most do, our budgets go up and down. So we are going to use that line to spend, but from our balance sheet, and also you can see it in the profit and loss, we still have plenty of money in the Mission Endowment Fund. We have it in a checking account, and we also have it in CDs. So we have, I'm guesstimating that we're over a year's worth of spending, if no more money came in the door, that we could keep going. So from a church perspective, we are rocking the house. A lot of churches, post bills and hope that parishioners can pay them because it's just that tight. So thanks to everybody here, and over the years, we've done a very good job.
Other questions?
I wanted to know a little bit about the piano repair.
Margareta.
I just wanted to know about the piano repair, and if somebody can address that. Sounds like a lot of money.
Well, that's a good question. I printed out his email to me, but let me see if I brought it with me this morning. He uses language I'm not familiar with, but I can print it out and put copies out there and email you directly. It had to do with the inside repairs and something about pads getting too thin. If it's not fixed in the short term, it'll impact the sound. But I'm really butchering what he said, to be honest with you. So I'll send you the email and I'll get that printed out. Good question.
Okay, I'm just going back to on the motion, you've got support low-income housing. Is that donation going to be decided to go to just one specific group, or?
You know what, it will depend on what the task force comes up with and recommends to the council.
Okay.
Whether it be, one big check that we support one organization or divide it into two, or our thought behind it is we wanted to make a significant impact in some organization, whether that's one or two, but we really wanted to boost, someone, some organization. Does that? Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Excellent questions, by the way.
I just have a comment. First of all, I think it's just amazing that we're having this discussion about how to spend this money, and that we have it to spend, and that we're going to share it. It's terrific. And I also think that if what Jonathan needs is new pads in the piano to keep this rockin' going, we should go there.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Bonnie?
As for the piano, we know that it's really important to our worship. And I own a piano, and I've been putting off repairs on it because of the expense of them. They are always expensive, and I don't really care who I've tried to reach out to. And I've had the same issue with the pads. And I did replace them about 10 years ago, but I think they might be disintegrating from age. So that happens, and here we are in a sanctuary, and I'm not sure if all the conditions are right for the preservation of the piano. You know, that always is there. And so we really need to look into this and go ahead, because that was a gift, I think, that piano to us by members of longstanding, the Galleys. And I would hate to see anything jeopardize the longevity of it.
Any other comments or questions? Well, I'm going to ask Pastor to end in prayer, but I want to thank each of you for staying and listening to this and being a part of our family here, especially with this budget portion. It's not always easy to figure out and to explain, and thank you.
Thank you, Erlinda and Dan and council. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for the abundance you have shared with us, the many blessings that you have bestowed on us. We thank you for all those who have been such good stewards of what we have received. Help us in this coming year to do your work with the resources you've given us, to spend it wisely and faithfully. And as we leave this place, fill our hearts with gratitude and send us into the world to do your work. In Jesus' name we pray these things. Amen. Go in peace, to love and serve the Lord.